HBO television series The Last of Us is currently the talk of the town, and with it, the spotlight is shining brightly on Pedro Pascal. The actor is portraying the role of Joel Miller, a central character in the survival horror video game whose journey maps out the storyline of the first game and as such, that of the series. Joel has lived a hard but happy life, but it all goes down for the worst with the outbreak of the cordyceps fungus, and yet he finds himself with the ability to love once again. As we follow his storyline, our hearts begin to warm up to the otherwise cold character. In today's video, we will talk about Joel Miller's life, one that is full of obstacles and the occasional rainbows. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. So thank you, and let's begin.
Jimmy, stay back! Jimmy, I am warning you!
Who was Joel before it all happened? The protagonist and playable character in The Last of Us, Joel Miller, was introduced as one of the survivors in the dystopian United States of America. Born on September 26, 1981, Joel hailed from Arlington, Texas. He grew up with his younger brother Tommy and learned to play the acoustic guitar. Having developed a passion for music, Joel aspired to become a singer, but due to unforeseen circumstances, that dream never came true. At a young age, he got married and became a father to Sarah Miller. His wife left him not long after the birth of their daughter, which became a sore memory for Joel to talk about. Eventually, the father-daughter duo began to live in Austin, Texas as Joel raised Sarah by himself. The responsibilities of parenthood grew heavy on Joel as a single father, and he lost the opportunity to ever attend college. Nevertheless, he loved his daughter with his life. Joel's dream of being a singer was long gone. However, he began to work as a carpenter with his brother Tommy, hoping one day to have a carpentry business of his own. Joel was also a great father to Sarah. Despite having to raise her by himself and working long hours, he managed to give her a normal, happy childhood where they spent quality time on the cruise, at carnivals, hikes, museums, and the occasional soccer matches. But as you may already know, the world fell victim to the terrifying cordyceps brain infection around the time of Joel's 32nd birthday. The fungal infection was so gross and deadly that it transforms its victims into mindless, hostile, zombie-like people who either died or lived to attack and infect others before their deaths. Joel lost Sarah in the initial stages of the outbreak of the fungus. In harsh times, typically create harsher people, and as such, Joel eventually became a sinister man who chose smuggling as a profession. So much for wanting to be a singer and an entrepreneur. In the future, after Ellie Williams' immunity to the cordyceps fungus was discovered, she became the key to mankind's survival as experts wanted to perform a surgery on her body to be able to replicate the conditions in others, thus either curing them from the cordyceps or making them immune to it. Joel was tasked with the job of smuggling her, bringing the duo together. Eventually, they ended up forming a strong bond with each other, and Joel decided against his mission, choosing to protect her instead.
Go!
The beginning of Joel's tragic life. Joel's life was quite eventful in the worst ways possible. It all began on the good day of his birthday. He had received a heartwarming gift from his daughter, who had repaired a cherished watch of his. They spent the last hours of his birthday watching television together until their neighbor contracted the cordyceps infection. The infected man attacked Joel, who gunned him down with his revolver and evacuated his house with Sarah and Tommy. As they rushed their trucks towards the highway, the situation proved to be a lot more severe than they had anticipated, because thousands had already been infected. The truck collided with a vehicle, leaving the trio to rely on their feet. Unfortunately, the collision had severely injured Sarah's leg, who had to be carried by Joel while Tommy stayed back to hold off the infected people. On the highway, Joel and Sarah found a soldier who began to shoot at them under the assumption that they were infected. Sarah received the lion's share of the bullets, while Tommy was able to save Joel from death. However, Sarah ended up tragically dying in her father's arms, which kickstarted his journey that eventually made Joel the cynical and ruthless man that we now know. Life in survival mode. At first, the dystopian situation made Joel consider committing suicide. However, he ultimately chose against it and became a hunter with Tommy. 20 years after the outbreak, the Miller brothers lived a sinister life, where, as hunters, they tortured and killed innocent people to survive, often deceiving people into assuming that they were victims and later using their vulnerability to attack them. The brothers eventually reached Boston, where Tommy left Joel's side. He didn't want to continue with his brother's menacing and incorrigible way of life, life, and as such joined the Fireflies. The Fireflies were a group that rebelled against the oppressive methods of the American quarantine zones and the military operating there. Their relationship turned sour, and Tommy eventually stopped being a part of the Fireflies and left for Wyoming. Joel became a smuggler and spent most of his time by himself, barring one instance where he could grow close to a woman named Tess Servopoulos. Meanwhile, he had grown to be suspicious of one of their allies, Robert, who was in the smuggling business as well. And Robert did end up showing his true colors when he hired men to attack Joel and Tess. When they confronted him, Joel tortured Robert, who confessed to selling their guns to the Fireflies. Tess killed him, and they decided to get their weapons back when the leader of the Fireflies, Marlene, arrived and offered them a deal. She needed them to smuggle something in exchange for their weapons, and so they headed straight for the task. A new purpose. Joel got taken to a kitchen by Marlene where Ellie attacked him. She was revealed to be the girl he had to smuggle, prompting him to question why the Fireflies were so interested in her. However, he never did get an answer, but agreed to help Marlene for a fantastic pay. At a checkpoint, Joel, Ellie, and Tess were checked for infection by the military patrol. A panicked Ellie attacked one of them when one of the scanners revealed that she had the cordyceps infection. She showed off a 3-week-old bite mark and claimed that she was not infected, but as they fled, Joel wanted to abort the mission. They reached the Capitol building and fought off several runners and clickers, the humans in their first and second stages of infection. However, they found the Firefly extraction team to be dead when Tess confessed to getting bitten. She showed her bite mark off to Joel, which was similar to Ellie's, but while the latter's mark had healed, the mark on Tess was swollen and throbbing. Joel finally had proof of Ellie's immunity, but he had to leave Tess behind and find Tommy, as he needed him to take Ellie to the Firefly base. A helping hand from friends. Joel and Ellie headed out to meet a mechanic named Bill, who owed Joel a favor. They ran into other infected people, but Joel was saved by Bill. Then they tried to retrieve a battery from a crashed military truck and found one of the trucks that Bill's late partner had fitted a battery into. Following that, Joel and Ellie drove off for Pittsburgh to get to Tommy. At the heart of Pittsburgh, they ran into hunters, where a man pretended to act as the victim for assistance. The trick was an old one in Joel's book, as he had done the same thing many times before when the man shot at him. Joel fought off the man and his comrades and went on to fight several hunters across Pittsburgh. Around this time, Joel and Ellie also began to bond, as he told her about life prior to the outbreak, and Ellie tried to lighten the situation with her jokes. Later, Ellie managed to save Joel from a hunter, making that her first kill. She was handed a hunting rifle by Joel, which made Ellie happy as he began to trust her. They ended up meeting 2 teenage boys named Henry and Sam and headed to their hideout. As Henry wanted to reunite with his survivor group and Joel wanted to find the Fireflies, they decided to go together after a quick rest. The 4 of them escaped later when Henry's brother Sam got infected and had to be shot by Henry. Joel tried to help him out of his state of distress, but in the end, Henry took the gun and shot himself.
He's my goddamn brother.
Tommy.
Holy shit.
How you doing, baby brother?
Joel and Tommy reunited. Joel and Ellie headed westwards, reaching Jackson County in Wyoming. They soon met Tommy, who surprisingly received Joel with a warm hug. In secret, Joel explained Ellie's immunity to Tommy, and that he had to pass Ellie onto the Fireflies for his mission in exchange for gear. Tommy agreed to the latter, but refused to take Ellie, because he believed that surviving wasn't worth it. The 2 of them argued and things got heated up, but before they could duke it out, they were attacked by bandits. They fought off the attack, and Tommy reluctantly agreed to take Ellie, who had stolen a horse from the ranch house of the settlement. However, Joel later decided against abandoning Ellie and headed to the University of Eastern Colorado, which was the base of the Fireflies.
What? Fireflies?
Get down!
Oh!
Trip to the university. It took them weeks to reach the university, and on the way, they fought off several infected humans, including a bloater, which was the 4th and most dangerous level of infection. Ellie and Joel continued to bond, with Joel gradually becoming a father figure to Ellie as they discussed his life and his dreams of becoming a singer. When they reached the university building, the Fireflies were gone, but investigating the location led them to a blocked door. Through the door, Joel and Ellie came across a Firefly skeleton and a recording, giving them the information that the Fireflies were in Salt Lake City. Before they could leave, they were almost shot by hostile survivors when one of the attackers mortally wounded Joel. Ellie tried to help him out, but Joel's punctured torso caused him to lose a lot of blood. The repercussions of a severe injury. Initially, Joel argued against getting help from Ellie, but she managed to fend off the attackers with a rifle and carried him through the building. They fled the building on a horse when Joel lost consciousness and fell off, leaving Ellie distraught and directionless. Ellie dragged a dying Joel to the mall and used her shirt to cover his wound. She then left the place to get a first aid kit, with which she stitched up Joel's terrible wound and dragged him on a sled. She then took him to a house near a lake where Joel ended up contracting septicemia. Ellie obtained penicillin from 2 survivors named David and James, whose group later tracked them down to capture them. However, as Ellie tried to flee, she was captured while the group failed to find Joel. Their horse was killed as well. The penicillin cured Joel, who was startled awake the next day and headed to search for Ellie. He found the stragglers from the group and tortured them into giving them the information about Ellie, ultimately killing them for capturing her. He then reached the settlement and found out that they were all cannibals. Despite being weakened, he slaughtered everyone he met and found Ellie, who was hacking at a dead David with a machete. Joe pulled her away and embraced her, relieved that she was safe. He called her baby girl out of endearment, just like he used to do with Sarah. Soon after, they fled the town. The final stage, and an unforeseen plot twist. By spring season, Joel and Ellie reached Salt Lake City, where they fought off a horde of the infected, but they were later found by the Fireflies before they could find them first. The Fireflies knocked Joel and Ellie out. When Joel gained consciousness, he saw Marlene and the few members from the Boston Fireflies who were still alive. Ellie was taken for surgery to use her immunity in order to create a vaccine for the cordyceps infection. However, to do it successfully, they would have to remove the fungus from Ellie's brain, which would lead to her death. Joel protested profusely, while Marlene insisted that a small sacrifice would save millions of lives. Having lost Sarah in the past, Joel was desperate not to lose Ellie and tortured the Firefly guard into giving him the location of the operating room. Battling his way through the facility, Joel reached the head surgeon Jerry Anderson and killed him to escape with Ellie. Marlene tried to stop him, but Joel ultimately shot her as he decided to save Ellie over humanity and headed back to Jackson with her. On the way, he lied to Ellie about the Fireflies giving up on finding a cure because he did not want her to experience survivor's guilt. Hoping to now live a normal life, Joel claimed that Ellie and Sarah would have been good friends. However, Ellie continued to doubt the truth behind what went down at St. Mary's.
Felt like you heard of us or something.
Because they have.
Second Trail, The Last of Us Part 2. In The Last of Us Part 2, Joel was a supporting character who was briefly playable, while Ellie and Abby Anderson were the dual protagonists. The game starts 5 years after the incident at St. Mary's, but a lot goes down before the beginning. Jackson, the calm before the storm. Early into the story, Joel revealed to Tommy the truth about Ellie and the entire ordeal with the Fireflies, who was shocked to know that Ellie did not know the truth. Tommy sided with his sentiment as Joel left for Jackson with his new acoustic guitar. Later that night, he gifted Ellie the guitar after singing Future Days by Pearl Jam to her. He had previously promised to teach her how to play the guitar, which touched Ellie's heart as he remembered his promise. In Jackson, Joel had become a respected member of the community, taking care of Ellie and often helping out and keeping the area clear of the infected with Tommy. Everyone lived in peace, and Joel had started working as a carpenter once again. He even had a makeshift workshop and occasionally took Ellie to places like he did with Sarah. Together, Tommy, Ellie, and Joel often fought off several infected humans, but Ellie continued to harbor her doubts about the St. Mary's incidents, finding it hard to believe that the Fireflies just gave up. The truth revealed. With Joel constantly dismissing her doubts, she eventually left for St. Mary's and confirmed the truth. Joel chased after her, finding out about her actions via a note, but he caught up a day later, and by that time, Ellie had confirmed what she needed to know and broke down on learning that he chose to save her over millions. The relationship between the duo got terribly stained because of this, and Ellie began to ignore Joel for a couple of years, as she felt like her chance to redeem humanity with a self-sacrifice was stolen. However, Joel claimed that if he was given a second chance, he would do the same thing again. But in the end, Ellie gave in and decided to forgive him, hoping to rebuild their bond.
You don't get to rush this.
Joel, a victim of vengeance. Unfortunately, on March 2nd, 2038, Joel came across Abby Anderson, whom he saved from a horde of infected people. She then took Joel and Tommy to her hideout with her group, where the brothers introduced themselves. However, the group went silent on hearing their names, and Abby shot at his leg with a shotgun. Tommy was knocked out while Joel was restrained to a wall. Abby was the daughter of Jerry Anderson, the surgeon Joel had killed in St. Mary's to save Ellie. Hoping to avenge the death of her father, Abby swore to kill Joel, making the situation at hand a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for her. She began to beat him up with a golf club, and soon Ellie reached the scene and tried to interfere, but Abby's group held her back while Abby smashed Joel's skull with her golf club, killing the 56-year-old.
You know, Sam's the one who spotted you. You guys are taking quite a bit of water. What's wrong with you? Henry! Get back, son! Hey!
Joel's relationship with the characters in The Last of Us. The Last of Us is a lot more than players fighting a bunch of infected people. Its rich storyline is primarily the reason behind the show getting a live-action HBO adaptation. Throughout Joel's run as a protagonist in The Last of Us, he formed several relationships. Some were good while some were bad, but it was all proof of the fact that despite living in a post-apocalyptic world and being reduced to a solitary life, Joel still had the heart to go on and form meaningful bonds with others. His most meaningful relationship was with Ellie, who he became a father figure for. In fact, it was the bulk of the storyline developed for the relationship and revolved around it. Joel choosing her over humanity is quite telling of how much he actually loved her. In fact, it was Ellie who finally helped Joel get over Sarah's untimely death. Another significant relationship in his life was the one that he had with Tommy, his younger brother. The two had conflicting views on life, with Tommy hating to work as a hunter, while Joel thrived on it. Despite their split, Joel and Tommy ended up reuniting and did not wallow over their differences. As time went on, their relationship improved as well. Joel's relationship with Sarah was one that shaped his personality for years to come. From the get-go, they were shown to be very tight father-daughter duo. However, with her early death, Joel wound up with a very cynical approach towards life, and it took him several years to come out of his grief of losing her. Throughout The Last of Us, he would often look at his watch that she had fixed for him on his birthday. He was also seen wearing it in the HBO series. Joel had briefly formed a good bond with Henry, a minor acquaintance of his and Ellie's. Joel did not trust him at first, but their conversations made him realize that they were quite similar, with both of them looking for the fireflies and caring for someone. For Joel, that person was Ellie, while for Henry, it was his brother Sam. Later, Henry abandoned Joel as they both tried to escape, bringing out Joel's violent hunter side as he was on the verge of killing Henry. However, he stopped himself from doing so, after which his relationship with Henry only got stronger. And then Sam got infected. Henry killed him, and then he shot himself, as he could not cope with the grief of losing his brother. This incident put things in perspective for Joel, who had seen himself in Henry. He saw the repercussions of people caring too much and basing their life's worth on protecting others. That was probably the reason why he tried to pass Ellie down to Tommy for keeping her under his care. Joel later met with Tommy's wife Maria, whom his brother had met at a settlement. Before knowing who Joel was, Maria was hostile towards him, but eventually began to show her kinder side towards him when she learned that it was actually her brother-in-law. However, Joel had tasked Tommy with taking Ellie to the fireflies, which had brought up severe opposition from Maria as she was afraid for her husband's life. She even shouted at him and promised to cause him harm if something bad were to happen to Tommy. The relationship strengthened later, but Joel's death caused Tommy to turn aggressive, which ruined his relationship with his wife. And finally, we have Abby, the one who hated Joel's guts for killing her father and eventually murdered him brutally in front of Ellie. But while he was being killed, Joel accepted the punishment instead of pleading with her to spare him. The similarities and differences between Joel in the video game versus the HBO television series. The Last of Us is currently one of the hottest television series on air, with Pedro Pascal doing a fantastic job at portraying Joel Miller's character. Even though so far the story seems to stick to the canon, it is evident that the creators are not interested in following the exact same script, and as such, they have occasionally deviated from what we are familiar with in terms of both the plot and Joel Miller's character. Both stories portray portray Joel as a tragic central character who is grief-stricken after losing his daughter Sarah, causing him to turn cold while often sporting the cracked watch she had previously fixed for him. However, the television series gave us a peek into how Joel almost avoided being infected by the cordyceps fungus before its rapid spread. You could thank his early morning food choices for that. In the third episode, Ellie had asked Joel about how the infection began in the first place when Joel told her about a possible theory. Experts had guessed that the cordyceps had mutated and found its way into the food supply, which infected the very first people who contracted the infection without getting bitten. With the fungus finding its way into basic ingredients like flour or sugar, it became unavoidable. In the game, Easter eggs across newspapers spoke about the contamination of crops and crops containing mold, leading to the fungal outbreak. In the show, Joel theorized that since the fungal spread all across the world, it probably wound up in a brand of food that was used worldwide, which could be true for bread, cereals, and pancake mixes, with pancake mix being the key player here. To understand this better, let's go back to the pilot episode where Sarah had planned to make pancakes for Joel's birthday. Fortunately, they were out of pancake mix. As such, she and Joel avoided getting infected. But that was not the only incident where they narrowly avoided the infection. There was also a part that you'd have to consume enough of the contaminated food to contract the infection. And so, even if their previous pancake mix had the mold, it was not enough to infect them. This previous example could come off a bit vague, but there are other instances that very clearly allude to the Millers narrowly missing out on the infection via food. On the day the pilot episode took place, the Millers' neighbor had offered them biscuits, which Sarah had turned down because they were raisin cookies and not chocolate chips. Later, one of the residents of the house who Sarah had witnessed eating the cookie ended up getting infected, and she was the first of their kind that Sarah ever saw with her own eyes. Later that day, Joel forgot to pick up his birthday cake, which Sarah was visibly sad over while they watched the news about a new street drug turning people violent, proving that the outbreak had already begun. Joel's character was given a similar appearance, with his salt and pepper hair, canonically accurate outfits with heavy boots, flannel shirts, jackets, and the essential somber expression. Pedro Pascal also sported a Texan accent to portray Joel Miller better. The actor had previously nailed other accents as well, with Oberyn Martell's thicker accent from Game of Thrones being an iconic example. But on the flip side, a big difference between Joel in the video game and Joel in the series is his apathy. While he becomes a heartless individual in the game, Joel from the HBO show is softer and shows more sympathy as he helps his fellow workers out and shows his distress over the burning bodies of children. His relationship with Tess is also different in the show, as they are shown to be more emotionally and visibly intimate towards one another, especially with Joel hugging Tess while sleeping. In the game, however, the relationship always remained unclear. With the release of the rest of the season, we are likely to see more deviations within Joel's character, as it is evident that the show is much more focused on character building.
We gotta get off the street!
Marvelous verdict. Being the exemplary character that Joel Miller is, Pedro Pascal's fantastic portrayal is a dream come true for the fans of the video game. If the story stays true to the canon and Joel ends up getting killed in the second season, it would be a devastating moment that we cannot brace ourselves enough for. But with that, today's video has come to an end. So what do you guys think of Joel Miller and his tumultuous life? Did you enjoy this video? If yes, don't forget to leave a like and comment on this video below. And stay tuned for more similar content in the future, and in the meantime, have a good one and be safe. See y'all next time.
Yeah.